She agreed to the blind date for one simple reason: she couldn't stand the thought of spending Christmas night alone again. The apartment felt quieter than usual that December evening. The Christmas tree glowed softly in the corner, its lights reflecting off ornaments she had bought years ago when life felt fuller. Outside, snow fell gently, covering the city in white, while inside, the silence pressed against her chest. Every year since her breakup, Christmas had felt heavier, lonelier. Friends were with families, couples shared warm dinners, and she was tired of pretending she didn't mind being alone. When her coworker Emily suggested a blind date, she almost said no. Blind dates had never worked out for her before. Awkward conversations, forced smiles, polite goodbyes, she knew the routine. But something about that night felt different. Maybe it was the loneliness. Maybe it was the quiet desperation to feel seen again, even for a few hours. So she agreed. She spent more time than usual getting ready. Nothing dramatic, just a simple dress, a warm coat, and the silver necklace her mother had given her years ago. As she looked at herself in the mirror, she didn't see excitement. She saw caution. She reminded herself that this was just dinner, nothing more. The restaurant was small but elegant, decorated with Christmas lights and evergreen garlands. Soft music played in the background. She arrived a few minutes early and chose a table near the window. Her hands trembled slightly as she wrapped them around a cup of water, watching couples laugh and lean into each other. Then she saw him. He walked in, scanning the room, clearly unsure if he was in the right place. He wasn't what she expected. Not overly confident, not flashy. Just calm. He wore a dark sweater, his hair slightly messy, like he hadn't spent too long worrying about it. When their eyes met, there was a brief pause, an unspoken question, and then recognition. He smiled. That smile eased something inside her. Introductions were simple. His name was Daniel. His handshake was warm, steady. As they sat down, the initial awkwardness hovered between them, but it didn't feel unbearable. It felt manageable. They ordered dinner and made small talk. Work, traffic, weather, the usual safe topics. But slowly, without either of them forcing it, the conversation deepened. She found herself laughing, really laughing, for the first time in weeks. Daniel listened when she spoke, not just waiting for his turn to talk. He asked thoughtful questions. He didn't interrupt. Halfway through dinner, something changed. Daniel's phone buzzed on the table. He glanced at it, then froze. She noticed immediately. His shoulders stiffened. His expression shifted from relaxed to stunned, like he had just been pulled out of the moment. "Everything okay?" she asked gently. He hesitated, then nodded too quickly. "Yeah, sorry. Just unexpected." He turned the phone face down, but the energy at the table had shifted. The warmth dimmed, replaced by tension. She wondered if she should excuse herself, if this was the part where the date quietly fell apart. But instead, Daniel took a slow breath. "I should be honest," he said. "I didn't expect to be here tonight." She raised an eyebrow slightly. "That doesn't sound very reassuring." He gave a small, embarrassed smile. "Fair. What I mean is, this wasn't supposed to be a date. At least, not in my head." That caught her off guard. "Then why did you come?" "Because my sister set this up," he admitted. "She thought I needed company." She wasn't wrong. There was vulnerability in his voice, something unpolished and real. She found herself leaning in. "Why? What's going on?" He hesitated again, then looked at her directly. "I found out something today. Something big." Her heart skipped. She expected bad news, loss, betrayal, disaster. Instead, he continued softly. "I just learned that my ex is pregnant. 5 months. The words hung between them. She didn't know what reaction he expected. Shock, sympathy, judgment. But all she felt was a strange understanding. Life rarely followed neat timelines. People carried heavy truths quietly until they spilled out at the most inconvenient moments. "That's a lot," she said carefully. He nodded. "I didn't know. She never told me. And now she's moving on, and I'm trying to process what that even means." She studied his face. He didn't look angry. He looked lost. "I'm sorry," she said. "That's not something you should have to find out through a text." He laughed softly, without humor. "Yeah, Christmas miracle, right?" Something about the honesty of the moment changed everything. The dinner stopped being a performance and became something else entirely. Two strangers sitting across from each other, both trying to survive the weight of their own lives. She surprised herself by opening up too. "I didn't come here tonight because I was excited," she admitted. "I came because I was lonely." He met her gaze. "Me too." The rest of the dinner passed differently. There were no expectations, no pressure. Just conversation. Real conversation. They talked about childhood Christmas memories, regrets they carried, choices they wished they could undo. Time slipped by unnoticed. When the check arrived, neither of them rushed to leave. Outside, the cold air bit at their faces as snow continued to fall. The streetlights glowed softly, turning the world into something almost magical. "I don't want to mislead you," Daniel said as they stood near the entrance. "My life is complicated right now." She nodded. "Mine too." They stood there, neither stepping away. "This doesn't have to be anything," he added. "But I'm glad I came." She smiled. "Me too." They didn't kiss. They didn't promise to see each other again. They exchanged numbers, hugged briefly, and went their separate ways. But that night, as she lay in bed staring at the ceiling, she realized something had shifted inside her. She hadn't spent Christmas night alone after all. Not really. She had been heard, understood. Over the next weeks, they texted. Slowly, carefully. Some days, Daniel disappeared into his own thoughts, overwhelmed by the future he hadn't planned. Some days, she pulled back, afraid of getting attached to someone who might not be emotionally available. But neither walked away. They met again in January. Coffee first, then walks, then long conversations that stretched late into the night. They didn't rush. They didn't pretend things were simple. Daniel talked about his fears, about becoming a father, about not knowing his place in his child's life. She listened without trying to fix him. She talked about her past, about the relationship that had left her afraid of trusting again. He didn't minimize it. Trust grew quietly. Spring arrived. Life moved forward. Daniel began therapy. He worked out arrangements, boundaries, responsibilities. He grew into the idea of fatherhood slowly, imperfectly. And through it all, she stayed, not as a savior, not as a replacement, but as a choice. One evening, months later, as they sat together watching the sunset, Daniel turned to her. "You know," he said, "if I hadn't gotten that message during dinner, I might never have been honest with you." She smiled. "And if you hadn't, I might never have stayed." Sometimes, love doesn't arrive with certainty. Sometimes it arrives on a quiet Christmas night, disguised as loneliness, honesty, and two people brave enough to stay at the table when things get complicated. And that, she realized, was more than enough.